Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. Kyodo News reports that the U.S. military and Japan self-defense forces began an 8-day joint drill called Keen Edge on February 1st. This computer simulation, based on a hypothetical crisis in Taiwan, tests U.S. and Japanese response strategies and notably includes China as a hypothetical enemy for the first time. The Australian Defence Force also joined Keen Edge for the first time. What are the political implications of the exercise? Joining us today are Arthur Ding, National Chengchi University Professor Emeritus and Taiwan-U.S. China military expert, and Stephen Tan, International Policy Advisory Group Managing Director. A warm welcome to both of you on the show.
Yeah.
Since 1986, Japan and the United States have conducted joint exercises with Keen Edge and Keen Sword typically held in sequence. Following this year's Keen Edge computer simulation, the U.S.-Japan alliance plans to undertake a Keen Sword live drill in 2025 to test the outcomes of Keen Edge. So previously, Keen Edge and Keen Sword drills focused on the U.S. and Japan simulating the recapture of islands, particularly to thwart China's takeover of the Diaoyu-Tai Islands. Yet this year, Japanese and Korean reports indicate a pivot to addressing China's potential military actions against Taiwan. So, Professor Ding, what are the implications that we can learn from this change of the focus?
Yeah, no doubt. The change shifting from with the focus on Diaoyu-Tai to so-called Taiwan Strait. We all know that the former Japanese Prime Minister Abe, he used to say that if there's a crisis in Taiwan Strait, there will be a crisis for Japan.
Yes.
So, since the Japan now these days pay more and more attention to Taiwan as development in Taiwan Strait, this is one issue. In addition to that, we all know that Japan focused on three issues: the North Korea, Diaoyu-Tai, and the Taiwan Strait. And no doubt, Diaoyu-Tai and the Taiwan Strait are directly related to Chinese military. So this is one aspect. Another is no doubt United States. Since the so-called President launched the so-called strategic competition with China, then Taiwan Strait is a major focus of the U.S. policy. So when they shift their focus from Diaoyu-Tai to include Taiwan, means that they will pay more and more attention to Taiwan, to develop any kind of development in the Taiwan Strait, and they have to do whatever kind of preparation they can do in order to cope with any kind of a potential crisis.
So in light of this kind of shift of the focus, Director Tan, do you think that this indicates that the U.S. and Japan are prepared to act in the event of a Taiwan contingency?
Well, I think in the ever-changing dynamics in the geopolitics in Indo-Pacific, every related party is prepared and try to get ready in the various different scenarios on the what-if basis. So far, the United States continue to exercise its policy, what is called a strategic ambiguity. Although there is a firm commitment that if China, for whatever reason, exercise non-peaceful means or other ways of coercion to change the peace and stability of Taiwan Strait, the United States will take actions. And under the treaty obligations, the United States and Japan will, to a certain extent, to the extent that it's involving in Japan, will take a joint actions. But then, as to what constitute the contingencies of Japan, and that would be subject to various different scenarios. I think remaining a certain degree or level of ambiguity will serve the purposes of multiple deterrence and also maximum amount of flexibilities to assure that the peace and stability of not just over Taiwan Strait, but in the whole Indo-Pacific be preserved. So I think if we look at the military drills and the exercises among the United States, Japan, and also Australia, you will see that various different scenarios will come into play, both in terms of the war game, that type of the exercise, and the actual military exercises and the drills next year. I think although you presume that, various parties presume that China is the aggressor, or China is the presumptive foe, then of course it's China. There's no one in this region that is more provocative than China. But then, if you look at the scenarios, there's various different other scenarios in the South China Sea, in the East China Sea, in Taiwan Strait, and then many other places that will come into play. So I wouldn't necessarily predict or read through the crystal ball that whether this is like Taiwan contingency is considered as part of the Japan contingency, and whether or not Japan will come into play along with the United States under the treaty agreement in various different scenarios. And I think that remains to be seen. But what's more important is that all related parties need to get ready to prepare for various different contingencies that may occur between now and in a couple of years, and if that happens and when that happens, whether or not and to what extent we can do. From our perspective, from Taiwan perspective, we also need to get ready, not just working with the like-minded countries, not just working very closely as we continue to do with the United States, Japan, Australia, and many other countries. We have to get ourselves ready. That means indigenous defense, that means our capabilities, that means mindset, that means psychological asset, whether or not the society is ready, is prepared, and then we can talk nonstop, among ourselves on this. But what's most important is that in the beginning of this year, in the year of Dragon in 2024, I think we have to build up a national consensus. So this is a critical part of state building.
Definitely preparedness will be the key word.
That's
so
right.
My next question is, if we take a step back, U.S.-China relations seems to get better after the Biden-Xi meeting last year during the APEC, and both sides started to resume dialogue. But given the scenario for this drill is targeting mainly at China, do you think that the U.S. is adding or decreasing its military pressure on China or not, Professor?
Well, there's no doubt, the atmosphere between China and the United States has been somewhat stabilized, if not improved, since the so-called the meeting, in San Francisco. But we know that from the U.S. perspective, United States has kind of a comprehensive strategy and preparation. Yeah, on the one hand, U.S. know quite well they have to stabilize the relationship as a kind of a crisis management for the whole Indo-Pacific. But on the other hand, the U.S. knows quite well they have to well prepared for kind of a unthinkable. For instance, we don't know, what if 10 years from now, if China get more stronger than before, then how China will act or react in this region. So on the one hand, we know that, no doubt, U.S. try to maintain and stabilize as kind of a crisis management for its relation with China. But on the other hand, U.S. know quite well they have to defense and militarily they have to fully prepare for the worst situation, the worst scenario. So, so in this kind of a context, on the one hand, we know the diplomatic relation gets somewhat stabilized, but U.S. also continue to, the deepens military preparation and further improve or integration with the military or defense integration with airline members, so on and so forth. So, on the one hand, we see, the atmosphere somewhat improved, but the preparation keep going on and on for the military, the preparation. Yeah.
What's your assessment for this?
Well, if you ask me whether the United States has been escalating or de-escalating the military preparedness or the pressure on China, I would say that that's seemingly unrelated to the U.S.-China political relations. By that I mean, yes, there seems to be some signals for the past few months, particularly for the past few days in Munich, where the Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, had a lengthy and seemingly productive meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken. You see some signals of China being more compromising and conciliatory and, sort of toning down on various different fronts for the obvious reason that China is reshaping its relationship with the major powers in the year of 2024, more or less for the domestic issues of concern, socially and economically and otherwise. But that itself, that of course U.S. is facing the primaries domestically of the elections of the both parties in 2024. It's going to be a big year, a big political year for the United States. So both sides has a very short window of opportunities to maintain the relationship between the two powers without any surprises. However, this does not mean that the military readiness or the military pressure on China is going to be at ease. Because military deterrence is in parallel to the political negotiations or the relationship between the two powers. I do not see any reductions in the military readiness or pressure that the United States is being imposing on China in Indo-Pacific, and I think in the foreseeable future that will remain to be the case.
Okay. Going back to the drill that we were talking about this time, the keen edge, this time Australia also participated. So do you think that Australia is taking a stance on this matter, Professor?
Yes, we all know that back to 3 years ago, U.S., Australia, and Great Britain signed AUKUS. Although AUKUS is kind of a agreement enable Australia to have the so-called nuclear power submarines, and along with so-called technological cooperation on certain fields like quantum computer or AI, so on and so forth. The question is that what kind of role Australia expect to play down the road. From kind of an alliance perspective, since the end of the Cold War, United States expect its allied member to take more responsibility. This kind of a so-called burden share or responsibility sharings. So we see, United States encourage Japan to become more active and proactive, like a peacekeeping operation and to provide logistical support during the Iraqi war, so on and so forth. So there's no doubt, the Australia and the United States have alliance relationship in the past 7 decades. Since the World War I, the Australia joined the U.S. force since the World War I, World War II, and in many of the Vietnamese War or other wars. So the question is that we really don't know what kind of arrangement role United States expect for Australia to play down the road. But we all know that under the AUKUS agreement, Australia is going to have nuclear power submarines, and this will enable Australia's Navy and the submarines go further away and from its shorelines. And what it means that well, Australia Navy or submarine can play a kind of a critical role in the Taiwan Strait contingency or not, we don't know. But at least this kind of arrangement will enable Australia to play a more active role militarily. And along with that, now we all know that when Australia submarine is able to navigate further away from his shoreline, it's related also to command and control from the headquarters in Canberra. So this might imply that the United States expect Australia to share more and more burden in the road in different kind of a scenario down the road. So, but to what extent exactly, we don't know. And probably it's kind of a matter between Australia and the United States. But we can image that the Australia definitely will, through this kind of AUKUS arrangement, will play a more role in the Indo-Pacific region to share the burden with the United States.
So talking about the sharing the burden and sharing the responsibility, the Japanese media claimed that the U.S.-Japan exercise has designated China as the hypothetical foe, but Japan immediately refuted this kind of claim. Do you think that through this exercise, actually China and, U.S. and Japan are trying to demonstrate a capability that they are together, they have the ability to thwart military action from China?
Well, no doubt about that. I mean, whether just to name as Japanese media name it China as a hypothetical foe or not, I mean, stakeholders in this region all know that China is not just a hypothetical foe, but it's
a real foe. Right?
It's a real foe, right? That's right. So I think toning down a little bit, without making specific comments by the Kishida administration of Japan in response to that remark is understandable. But then again, the joint effort between the United States and Japan in terms of the military exercise and the drills, there is only one hypothetical foe, which is exactly China, right? So these coalition under the treaty agreement has been firming up and it's been more solidified. And then the fact that Australia is now part of it, either through AUKUS or this time, Australia joining force, it's not going to make China happy. For obvious reasons, because China might mistakenly believe that Australia, with the change of the administration, is shifting gears to be more a balanced approach. But I think Australia has the perfect hatching strategy, as we all know, being part of the AUKUS, being part of a military exercise. Because I think at the end of the day, Australia has an imperative national interest and an ultimate stakeholder, one of the ultimate stakeholders in the peace and stability of Indo-Pacific, particularly in South China Sea and also Taiwan Strait. So I'm not surprised that Australia joining force, and then there is a firmer coalitions between the United States and Japan and other countries, including Australia.
Definitely. The International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, in the UK, has released its 2024 Military Balance Yearbook, highlighting escalating tensions in the Indo-Pacific, Northeast Asia, and Africa. The report warns of a growing risk of severe military conflicts over the next decade due to increased investment in military capabilities by nations. So considering a growing global arms race, could the next decade see heightened risk in the geopolitical area? Or you can say, my question, simply put, which area in the world will present the highest geopolitical risk, in your opinion? Maybe we start with Director Tan.
Well, I think there's multiple hotspots that's happening at the same time. You see Ukraine war is ongoing. You see Israeli-Hamas war is ongoing. And there's a bit of more shaky situation in the Middle East. And then, of course, you look at the South China Sea and the the Philippines, the Vietnam, and for all pointing at the Chinese claim of the territory over the South China Sea, the Korean Peninsula, no doubt about that, and of course Taiwan Strait. So I wouldn't just name the names that in terms of the ranking or the pecking orders, or which is the highest geopolitical risk, which is the second. I think multiple hotspots that's occurring at the same time. Then, of course, the United States, for instance, has made itself very clear that Indo-Pacific is still it's one of the highest priorities in terms of the national interest. And then if you look at the defense budget, and if you look at the energies and resources that's pulling in, and if you look at the general populations, what their concerns, primary concerns in the international relations aspect, it all pointed out that Taiwan and China, Indo-Pacific, of course, among Israeli, Hamas, and the Ukraine. So this has remained one of the hotspots in the world as we speak.
So IISS has observed that China, drawing lessons from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is gearing up for a long-term conflict in the Indo-Pacific, and they're making preparations. For example, they're relaxing the rules for the reservists and also the veterans, and they are allowing the access to civilian infrastructure and fuel. So, Professor Ding, could you please assess the significance of these moves done by China? Are they ready for a long-term war?
Well, it's a Chinese scholar. He described China's current foreign overall policy is kind of China try to build a so-called wartime economic system. Means that economically China try to be completely self-sufficient, decoupling the relation with financially or technological decoupling relation with United States or other probably the Western countries. So there's no doubt, China under Xi Jinping is doing many things that we really need to watch and closely. What is the motivation for China to do that? As you mentioned, to call back those former retired
service people,
soldiers, or the petty officials, so on and so forth. So we see that maybe on the one hand, China now is suffering kind of a slowdown economy. So to expand its size is one way to solve this kind of economic problem, to help the so-called help improve the employment. But what if its military size expand? Well, what it means? Particularly if you call back those very skillful, retired officials, because you want to fight a modern wars, those people, soldiers or officials who are very skillful about operating those modern platform and the systems, extremely important for the so-called joint operation. So we don't know. We probably not to exaggerate any kind of China's so-called conspiracy. But on the other hand, we really need to watch closely what else China is doing. For instance, does China really launch so-called mobilization or not? Give tremendous order to the factory in order to the backup of kind of material, so on and so forth, and the frequency of China drill or exercise for this so-called roll on roll off these kind of ships, so on and so forth. So we really need to pay really close watch to China's military exercise and to what extent China mobilize, doing the so-called national mobilization, so on and so forth. So as a kind of a measure, so that we can prepare ourselves for the worst situation. So far, no doubt, we don't see this kind of signal yet. But again, we do see China is somewhat great, increasingly expand its force size. So we really need to take a close look. Yeah.
So one final quick question for Director Tan. You have talked about all these hotspots around the world, but if we zoom into the Asia-Pacific or the Indo-Pacific region, given the situation or the tensions in China, how can we maintain the stability and peace in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, I think all the stakeholders in this region, we need to get ready. We need to continue to have political discussions and dialogue, but in the meantime, being ready on the military ground, because as I just pointed out, multiple military deterrence is strategically important to avoid or to deter the occurrence of the war. So I think all the stakeholders in this region, just to name the names, Korea, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and everybody, India, Australia, New Zealand, everybody in this region is and should be a responsible stakeholder and will be playing pivotal role maintaining the peace and stability of this region.
What's your take on this?
Yeah, I fully agree, because we have to, we don't know what is the China's motivation, but we have to prepare ourselves so that we can put ourselves in a better position to dispel or cope with any kind of a potential crisis. Probably we also need to send a warning signal to our allies. We have to watch closely what China is doing, and we probably need to prepare ourselves. So it's not just ourselves, and we probably also need to remind our ally members and friends, so that we can jointly closely, and to watch China's development.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have for today. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.